Welcome back to another episode of How Do Artists Make Money? The show where we try to answer the age-old question, how do artists make money? Today I'm talking to Caleb Staker, who is a character designer from the animation world, who has over the last few years transitioned into far more of a business owner, who owns many different businesses doing many different things, where character design is a surprisingly small amount of what he's up to these days. Before we get into that conversation, I want to quickly reflect on the point of this show. When you think about being a successful artist online, on social media, running your own business, so much of the guidance is social media tactics. How to grow an audience, post this on Instagram, YouTube thumbnails, use this hashtag. And to me, when I see that stuff, I think, to what end? That's one way to be successful, but as we'll see from our ongoing conversations, there are so many different ways to find success. So the point of this show is to give young artists something to aim for. Here's how successful artists are doing things, how they're running their business. And if you want to emulate that, that gives you something to aim for. And now you can cherry pick what tactics you want to use online to get there. That's what we're trying to do here. Pull back the curtain on all the surprising ways you can find success as an artist. And with that, let's get into the conversation with Caleb. Caleb, thanks for joining me today. I want to preface this conversation with a quick note that we're business partners on this podcast. And I think how that came about was we connected over the last year or so as animation artists first, and then we slowly discovered that we are equally passionate about running our own businesses. And we connected, we started talking, and for me, the genesis of this podcast was talking to you and hearing about how differently you were running your business compared to mine. Even though to the observer, we might be in the same world, in the same realm, doing the same thing. But as we'll talk about today, we're kind of doing things completely different. So that was the genesis of the podcast for me. So very excited to dive into that.
I'm excited too. This is going to be fun.
Let's start with the basics. How would you describe yourself professionally?
All right, that's an interesting question because I've gone through a lot of kind of self-discovery the past few years. So right now I would consider myself a creative entrepreneur. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was a character designer, a diehard character designer. That was my dream. That's what I was doing. But through some layoffs and some things that happened, we can go into that story a little bit more. I kind of had to go out on my own and figure things out. And now I'm an entrepreneur. I make my own money. That's
a great way to describe it, because I've had the same internal struggle of, am I an animator? Am I a visual effects artist? Yes, in technique and trade, but there's a bigger picture to all of it, especially with the social media, content creator, influencer labels. So I guess it's not as easy as a question as I thought it was.
No, it's a good question because it's something I've been thinking about, and I think it's helpful for everyone as we're kind of working through that right now. I think a lot of people are in the same position. So what are we? I mean, for me, being a character designer was my identity. Like that was a really tough one to break as I'm kind of venturing out on my own, but it's given me opportunity for so much growth. So it's a great question. I love that.
And a follow-up to that, what's the structure of your business? Are you solo? Do you have employees? Services like agents, accountants, all that stuff?
Yeah, so this is where we kind of differ. As far as I understand you are one business and you kind of offer a few different services in that business. I think I own about 5 businesses at this point. And so each business kind of has a different setup. So maybe I can run through the different businesses that I own and different things that I do, and then maybe we can talk about how those are set up. But I own 1, a marketing agency, and then 2, a second marketing agency. And I have 2 because I had 1 first, and then I was presented an opportunity with partners. And so they're very different clients that we deal with. And so those have been separated out. And that's why I have 2 marketing agencies. The third business is an education business. Then I own an Amazon library that sells different products, different education products. And then this isn't necessarily a business, but it kind of feels like it. I have an investment portfolio that I run. It's not something that I have to manage every second, but I am pretty heavily involved in that, and it brings in an income each month. And so that I consider that a business, I guess. And then 6 is freelance character design work. I still do that. It's not as big of the pie. It actually takes up a lot of the time, but it's not as big of a piece of the pie as the others. So those are the 6 things that I do that bring in money.
And you're doing this all by yourself?
Yes. So it's all me. I do hire freelancers for different things. And I've had some almost full-time employees helping out with some different sales projects that I was working on with my different products, but mostly just me.
Yeah, I'm in the same position where I've occasionally brought in freelancers, but I just don't want to be responsible for employees. And I think that adds a whole new layer to your company and the responsibility for taking care of them. So that when you listed out those companies, saying marketing agency and second marketing agency struck me because I was like,
yeah, there's
2. And also the fact that you listed character design as number 6 on the things that you're doing. The first 4, I was like, what do any of these mean? Marketing agency, what is an Amazon library, all that stuff. So we can get into it. Yeah. Tell me a bit more about the difference between the first marketing agency and the second one.
Well, we're doing a lot of the same things. I guess the biggest difference is just the client. And so, for example, one of the marketing agencies serves, like, we have a client that's a lawyer. So that's a different need. We're trying to bring business into the law firm and close deals and revenue that way. And so the marketing is a little bit different than what we're doing for the other agency is specifically for content creators. So I do help make content for the law firm and other different clients that we have there. But for the content creators, it's running some ads, it's content creation, it's design. It's kind of like I'm a genie. They come make wishes and I say, yes, I can, and try to figure it out. Sometimes I'm pretty good at knowing what they need. Sometimes I don't, and I have to figure it out. But those are the 2 different businesses. And since I already had the content creation one going on my own, I just felt it appropriate to kind of keep that separate for now, as the other one was started with partners, and so that I could manage my assets separately like that.
So the law firm that you mentioned, we had talked about this in a previous conversation. Is that the one you're doing storyboarding for?
So when I mentioned the storyboarding, it's not necessarily that I am boarding for them. Maybe I do some thumbnails as we're figuring out content and going through that process. But I was specifically saying how I was able to go from character designer and storyboard artist to now working with law firms and doing marketing for these companies. It's because that a lot of these skill sets kind of have crossovers. And as I'm making content and doing camera work, my experience as a storyboard artist has helped me know what's entertaining, how to hold attention, how to frame and do these different things, that I'm bringing something very unique to the law firm. There's lots of other services for content creation here in Las Vegas, but not a lot of them have storyboarded on shows in Hollywood. I mean, so it's a very big sales point. When I bring that up, they get very excited. They're not creative people. And so when they're like, oh, we can be involved in creativity, like it's a really big selling point that I have to kind of make that work. So it's not that I completely storyboard for them. Those skills do help me, but it's a great selling point. It's taught me skills that have helped make this happen.
So you're doing pre-production work for them to then go produce the video content for their social media?
Yep, exactly.
And yeah, I'm drilling into this because it struck me when you brought this up the first time, because in my mind, being an animation or film storyboard artist mostly means, okay, I have to go find a film to work on. I have to go find a show to work on. I have to get into the industry to do this. But you're going to these small businesses and saying, look, I can storyboard your video content to get the creative legwork out of the way for then you just to go produce it. So you can ditch the industry completely and just go to businesses and say, look, here's my services. I've worked on stuff. Let's make a deal. Let's build a long-term partnership. And you can duplicate that across many businesses.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up here is like, we're making this to help people and not just be like, oh, look at me. I'm making lots of money and making businesses. I really want to help people. And what helped me in this process, and I'll tell a short little story here. I'll try to be quick. But when I was laid off a few years ago, I didn't know what to do. I'm out here in Vegas freelancing from my home studio, and I had to find something quick. I have a family, wife, kids, a mortgage, all of these things. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I applied to different charter schools, elementary schools around town to get a teaching job. I land one fairly quickly, which was really awesome, but they offered me $42,000 a year. And not to turn my nose up at that, but I just couldn't pay my bills with what they were offering. And so I made the decision to just figure this out on my own. I had to go out on my own. And so what happened was I learned about offer creation, which is basically finding a problem that someone has that you have the skills to maybe solve or fix for them. And I would go up to them and say, hey, I can do this for this amount of money. And people started saying yes. And so once I learned that I could just make my own offer and go pitch to people, I started making better offers, bigger offers, going to businesses that actually have money, that need my services, and kind of like the game was over. It started working out.
Yeah, and it was this kind of stuff, me hearing about this kind of stuff, that perked my ears up, because I'm from the social media world where, I'm casting a lure out into the water and hoping fish start nibbling, whereas you're getting out there with a spear and attacking the fish. So it's completely different. We're kind of arriving at the same thing, but from completely different sides. And
Yeah.
so the second marketing agency is this. You say you do it for content creators. Is that specifically artists?
I would say anyone creating content online. So I've transitioned to work with larger content creators. Like, these are people that do it for a living, that have large accounts. I mean, probably 500,000 plus per account. So several million followers across all of their platforms. And they need help editing videos, running ads, making merch designs, literally anything that they need. I'm kind of like their one-stop shop. Hey, Caleb, can you do this? I say yes. And when I don't always know how, I get freelancers to help out. I try to source that, and that kind of turns into another branch of my team. I'm building that way. I try not to say no to anything.
And so I'm guessing that business is more of just kind of the intellectual property of your design brain overseeing everything. Like, you're not in there doing all the work, but you're just, as a designer, you're seeing the merch, you're seeing the edits, you're seeing all that stuff and overseeing it all.
Right now I am doing most of it. So if I can't do something, I'll hire it out. But yeah, if I know Photoshop, if I can design something, I'll do it. I know how to edit, so I'll do the editing. Right now I'm doing most things myself.
That's interesting that your character design knowledge crossed over into merch design. That's such an obvious thing to do that I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover, and maybe it was just my experience. I feel like we're all kind of similar, but growing up, we have these creative interests and we do a lot. Like, I used to make short films. I wanted to be a stop motion animator before someone told me that stop motion was dead. And so I changed gears, but I made a lot of stop motion animation when I was a kid as well. And I would draw a lot. I did all of these different things. And just because I landed on character design, that's kind of like where I got my first job. And so the path went. But I don't know, we all have these different creative skills. We have these creative minds, and we can solve creative problems. At the end of the day, it's a marketplace of problems, and people just want their problems solved. And if you can solve their problem, they throw money at you. It's not even about sales or being a good salesman. I hate sales. I just like showing people the value that I have, that I can help solve their problems, and they gladly hand me their money, and it's a mutual benefit.
That's great. Let's talk about the education business. So I'm guessing that's the character design mentorship?
Yes, character design mentorship.
What kind of students are you having for that? Is that mostly people with ambitions to be in the animation industry?
I'd say most of them, maybe 90%. There are hobbyists or people that are just interested in character design that I also work with and help. But this is mostly students coming out of school and are struggling, one, with their portfolio and needs some polishing, but also the business side. So what I feel like is different and why my mentorship is selling is because there are a lot of other great programs, a lot of other great artists currently selling mentorships. And honestly, they're probably better than me in character design. I'm not the best artist in the world. I've never claimed to be. But what I have that other people don't is I have a business sense that really, really helps sell their portfolio and get them into the door, kind of the networking and sales aspect. And so in the mentorship, we run through polishing their portfolio. And then now that you're out of school, your professors didn't do a great job at teaching you how to sell and go finding a job. And so I help them do that. And so they can go out and sell themselves and get a job.
Do you find it's important to have an end goal in offerings like that? Like when you get out of here, we'll have your portfolio ready to go. Or when you get out of this program, you'll be ready to talk to business or to studios that you might want to work at.
I think so. A big problem that I've been noticing, and this again comes from like the business background. I'm very obsessed with business. It's just how my mind thinks, and most artists aren't. And I wasn't either for a really long time. I was obsessive over my craft back then, and that's what I knew, character design. But you don't really think about your portfolio as an offer and the problem that it's solving. And if you just look at it from that single lens, then the world opens up. Like, you're not angry anymore that you're not getting hired or people aren't taking chances on you, because look, my portfolio doesn't solve anything. Even as a character designer, it's not solving a problem. I don't know what I'm offering to the world. And so I think they need to get clear on that. You can in school, you're paying a lot of money. And if you're not getting clear on that in school, then you shouldn't be going to school. You need to just solve a problem and you're going to get picked up and hired. When I talk like that, though, I do get a lot of hate online. I say this on TikTok and other places, and a lot of people in animation I know are frustrated. I understand the position the industry is in, but I am a very, very firm believer in offer creations. And if you can solve problems, and maybe that one character design isn't hitting right now, but you can twist it, reposition yourself in the market, and there are opportunities. This is one thing that I don't back down on, because there's a lot of negativity online saying that creativity is dead or artists don't have a future, all of these different things. And it's just not true. I know we're probably not talking numbers on this show, but I'm doing pretty well. And this has all happened in the past 2 years. I really think that now is a great time for creators, and there's opportunity there. If you can get clear on solving problems and then just going out and telling people you can solve their problems, it's all right there for you to take.
That's a great way to look at it, because I remember putting portfolios together back when I drew and painted things in college and sorting out my portfolio. I remember it felt like a lottery. I was like, I don't know, this is the best one. I'll put this in. So yeah, having the goal of what problem I'm solving, that not only shapes your portfolio, but as the industry changes, you can say, am I addressing this new problem? And if not, okay, let's tailor the portfolio to now address the new problem. So that's a great point of guidance. One follow-up on that. What are you doing to promote that mentorship or that online education? Are you actively advertising that all the time?
Yes, but I switch up the form. So I do run ads sometimes. That's not always like a solves all. Like if you think, oh, I'm going to throw money at this, it's going to work. No. I do TikToks. That works really, really well. I post just like on LinkedIn, sometimes my Instagram. Instagram hasn't been as great the past year. So LinkedIn is really great to post on, TikTok really great to post on. And then I do a whole lot of cold outreach. That's what works for me. So instead of posting something and hoping people reach out to me, I go the outbound route, and I have very dialed in scripts that I work with, and I reach out to people constantly, all day, every day. And then those that are interested and that it seems like a good fit for, we have a conversation and then schedule a time to meet.
Knocking on doors. I like it.
Yeah, it's the classic door knocking online.
Let's talk about the Amazon library, because I have no idea what that is. And this is a good example of the goal of this podcast is to basically open open the conversation on what's possible. So you wrote down Amazon Library as an income source. I have no idea what that is. Tell me about it.
Basically, Amazon has this print on demand program called Amazon KDP. Most people have heard about it. You make a book. It could be a coloring book. It could be just a written book. It could be a whole, whatever you can imagine, really, you could make. And you put it up, have your royalty set for what you want. I target like $4 to $5, and then you post it, and that's it. It's on the marketplace, and Amazon is a search engine, so people find it, they buy it. I don't do anything. I just collect royalties that are deposited into my bank account. If I want to advertise or push them online, I can do that. I can have links to my different products. So what I own in my Amazon library is, like I said, I'm pretty obsessed with business and this sort of thing. So I write different books about these topics. I have, I guess, creative YA novels. I wrote Saggy Town, a lot of people know about. My wife has books as well. She wrote a recent Peter Pan retelling that is doing really well. We write books, and we make workbooks. We do a bunch of different stuff, and those continually sell. And so it adds a nice little royalty every month.
Do you find certain books do better than others? Like the fiction versus, writing, business strategy, that kind of stuff?
So one thing that doesn't do well is business strategy for artists. Unfortunately, everyone seems to be interested in business and making money, but as soon as I say, hey, I have this book, or I will do a mentorship and teach you how to do this and make more money, like instantly people just aren't interested. They don't want that. But if I post anything about character design techniques or drawing, like that is what really, really sells in the creative space. People just eat that up. They want more drawing education. As far as fiction, some do well and some don't. My wife's Peter Pan book is doing really well. My Saggy Town book did well for a little bit and slowed down. So I think new IP is a little bit more difficult. It takes a lot of money to try to put it out there and tell people about it. A lot of extra effort, but strategically kind of working with things that are already being searched for, that's probably the best place to start when you're just getting going.
So are there fiction titles that you've done, like some have been worth the effort and some haven't?
I'm going to say no.
I guess we should split it into dollar amount, and then, it's never not worth it because you're learning, you're growing, you're doing something. So even learning what not to do is valuable.
I'm still going to say no, and this is why. Because I run my businesses very lean, and my wife has a bunch of other friends, they're creators, and they're wanting to write romance novels too and get into what she's doing. She's inspiring a lot of people. And what we're finding is, again, the artist mind really excited about the creativity, and then they want to go buy this $30 thing, and then this $200 writing program, and then this thing, and they're not really thinking about the bottom line. And they might spend $2,000 to get that book put out, and then maybe they only sell $1,500, and then the book dies. So that's not a profit. We run really, really lean, and so maybe it costs us $20 and then time. We try to protect our time, but we have some free time, and so we can invest that into something. And then the book goes on and starts making $1,000 a month. That's all profit. I mean, it's not crazy money for that one book, but it's all profit. And then we just roll that back into our investments, and then those investments make money. And that's kind of like our money machine. So it's not huge amounts of money per book, but run really lean, and it makes it really worth it.
Yeah, I've been gradually looking at my income, the various sources, as layered, where my YouTube isn't outrageous money. I've mentioned that it's maybe $1,000 a month or something, maybe $2,000 on a good month. And I don't look at that as big business income, but that pays for all of my stuff. That pays for my domains, that pays for all the digital services I have to, basically the bills of my business every month. So that's that first layer. And once those are costs, okay, now I'm profitable. Now other stuff can then be considered a different layer of business. So the last two items, you have freelance character design. I'm guessing that's pretty straightforward. Studios come to you to do design.
Yep. Pretty simple. I get an email, I get the assignment, I do it, and then they send me a check. Really simple.
So is that a small percent of the pie at this point?
At this point, it is. Yeah. It's in terms of dollars, like I said, I spend a lot of time, like a lot of time doing that. And it doesn't pay that much in compared to what else I'm doing.
Given that your passion for character design got you to this point, do you take on some of those jobs just to kind of feed your soul a bit?
Yeah, at this point, it's kind of a feed the soul. It's the dream. I mean, one day, and this is where I, again, think kind of differently, because I think thinking about money and putting yourself in the position to be free, like I imagine myself kind of being free someday. I'm earning all this money. Someday, I don't need money. So I'll be able to then focus on the character design and the art, and it might not get paid a ton of money, but that's the dream. I can just kind of earn my honest living with character design because I don't need money anymore and can just live the dream. But until you kind of focus and dial in on the finances, then it adds that layer of pressure and it doesn't work out. Actually, I found myself getting better and better jobs because I'm more and more free, because you're not like frantic and have that pressure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's about being smart financially. I've put myself in positions through the years where I've had too many bills to pay for whatever reasons. And you get into that zone of panic where you're taking everything you can just to keep up. And you start taking on, jobs that don't, represent yourself well, or, you're doing it just to survive and make money. Versus, I've dialed in things and I have life in a better position now where I can be really picky about what jobs I take. And I'm doing one right now that's quite low pay comparative to what I've done in the past. But I just saw it as a really good opportunity. And I was like, I love that. I'm passionate about that and I want to do it. So regardless of what the level of pay is, and I think it'll be one of my best pieces of work in years. And to that point, I added this as my last item in the previous episode, investments, because I've finally got my head wrapped around the financials of a corporation. And I do have a chunk of money sitting there that's invested in my corporation. And as a good example, my checks are random. Sometimes big ones come, sometimes small ones. Sometimes there's months where there's just no checks at all because of the way jobs have timed out. And so last month I had to sell off a portion of investments to cover payroll for me. But my investments made more than what I had to take out to cover that payroll. So technically I was still profitable off the investments.
Yeah, no, very similar. I don't have a corporation and paychecks to worry about, but just like I have long-term investments. I have investments that pay dividends that bring in monthly income. And I also do some trading because I'm interested in business and buying and selling of assets. And so I do make some money that way as well. That's something I'm pretty actively involved in. It's a really good thing to invest and start investing. And if I had started younger, back in college, it would have changed things for myself. So not that you should do it, the people that are watching, but it's something to look into if you haven't started. And it's really simple. I mean, you don't need lots of money. It's more about building that muscle of continually doing it. If you can only do $10 a month, well, then do $10 a month. Just get in the habit of investing and having a little bit of money left over each month. And when you're our age, I mean, you're going to have way more money than we ever did. So something to look into.
I equally kick myself for not starting earlier. Let's move on to a couple bonus questions here. How would you describe the shape of your career financially? Has it been every year it's more and more? Has there been big ups, big downs? What's it look like?
The first half was all over the place as a character designer. I came out of school swinging. I think this was back when money it seems like money doesn't have as much value now, but back when I first came out of school, 70,000 seemed like a lot of money. We were on top of the world. That was my first job at a studio, in-house studio. I was paid $70,000 a year, and that was amazing. Kind of up and down from there. Then 4 years later, I was making $35,000 a year. So pretty big difference there. And then shortly after that, maybe a year or two after that, is when that layoff happened, and it kind of changed my perspective as I started to ask myself these questions, went in on myself, started making offers. Then it's been up from there. I mean, pretty significant growth month to month, I would say, over the past 2 years.
That's great. And what's a professional mistake that you've made that you would have done differently?
That's a good question. You know, if you haven't noticed already, I'm kind of a bumbling Dumbo. I'm really shy. I'm not very eloquent. I get very nervous. And so I've put my foot in my mouth many, many times. So there's lots of little mistakes like that. But as far as a big mistake, maybe this isn't the same as, it's professional, but maybe not the same as you're asking. But a financial mistake that changed my professional life was I used debt back when I was younger and in school. Like everyone does. Student loan debt. I had a car loan, and I think that was probably it. I've never been into credit cards or anything like that. Now, if I didn't do that, and again, focused on owning assets, owning things, and not borrowing things and paying other people interest, then I would have been way further along. So that's one big regret for me, is I wish I learned more about assets faster. And that's one thing that I wanted to bring up here to older or younger artists or creatives or just humans out there trying to make it happen for themselves. I really like listening to this guy. His name is Myron Golden on YouTube. Go watch his videos, super fantastic. And he's always talking about assets and how income follows assets. And it's really true. The path to wealth and freedom is by owning things. Once I figured this out, I got all the debt out. I paid everything off, completely debt free. And I started paying myself that interest and buying assets. At the time, the only assets I knew I could do or buy were just stocks, mutual funds. And so as simple as downloading Robinhood or something on my phone back in the day, and just started buying things that I could own. And that's what changed my life. And so I wish I didn't borrow money, and I don't plan to again.
I am so on the same page. I've gotten myself out of some pretty big debt holes, and it took a long time. And I'm also proudly debt free at the moment. I don't do, car leases, car loans, any of that stuff.
That's fantastic.
And I feel very relieved and relaxed most of the time versus when I was massively in debt. Final question. What's your biggest business goal for the future, and how are you getting there?
You asked me that ahead of time, and I sat and thought, it's a really tough one. And a couple things, and you know what, I wasn't going to say, just because I feel like it might sound a certain way to people. It doesn't matter if people don't like this, then that's okay. If you want to talk to me, hit up my DMs and we can talk through it, and I can explain a little bit more why. But I have two goals. One, I would really like to make a business that I can sell. Right now, a lot of the things that I'm doing are very much either my face, I'm the identity of the business, and it's kind of a challenge to break away from that, or like the marketing firms, agencies, I could sell someday, but I need to remove myself and put things in place. And so I don't know if that'll work out or if that is the path, but someday I would like to make something that I can sell. And the second goal, and this is the one that I was a little nervous sharing, but I have a goal of hitting $100,000 in 1 month. I'm not going to tell people how close I am to that, but that is a goal that I'm working towards. And there's many reasons why, but I have family that I want to take care of. And I also really have dreams and goals of providing jobs and opportunities for other people. And so by having larger amounts of money coming in, I'm able to employ more people. And so that's one thing that I'm currently working on. I'm hoping that I can hit that goal next year, but we will see.
That's a great goal to have. Yeah, I think that's a great place to end the conversation. Caleb, thanks so much for talking to me. Thanks for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're listening this early, episode 2, We really appreciate your support. It means a lot. And if you want to make sure you get the next and all future episodes, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to us there. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.